Hey, everybody. So, if you're just joining the room now, welcome to the English Hacks webinar series. And you are going to get a lot of information in this webinar series today. So, make sure that you have your notepad, a pen, and anything else that you need nearby so that you can use it immediately. And we are going to start in about 1 minute, so that gives everybody time to join and to start viewing the webinar. As you join the room, make sure that you select your option from the poll if you are with us on Webinar Jam. If you are with us on YouTube, just write a comment and tell us what your favorite flavor of ice cream is. So, do you like chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, or mint? Just to let us know that you hear me and that you're with us. All right, I see we already have 10 people in the room. So let's go ahead and get into it. Hi, guys. You see me right now, and what I want to do is I want to tell you thanks a lot for being with us in this webinar today. We're really going to be talking about a lot of useful information, so I think that it's a great decision that you've made to be here. And my task, my job throughout the next 4 days of the webinar series is to help you speak more naturally. And we're going to be repeating that phrase again and again and again because that's really our goal today. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the camera around and I'm going to show you a presentation. And that way you'll be able to see what I'm talking about visually at the same time that you're hearing what I'm saying to you. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you go to englishhacks.krisamerikos.com and register for the next webinars as well. So this is day 1, and there are 4 days, and you really need to get all of the content, to get the full effect, and to start speaking more naturally. So make sure that you can see the presentation. And like I said, this series is called English Hacks. We're going to make sure that you are able to speak naturally like a native speaker. A lot of people say that they want to speak like a native speaker. And what does that really mean? We're going to talk about that a little bit here today too. Also, what do you need to change? What are the steps that you need to take to get to where you want to be? These are going to be some of the topics that we discuss. So I see that some people have already written in the comment section, in the chat. Hey there, Evgeny. Hi, Greg. Hi, Olga. Thanks for joining us. And, just tell us where you're from. And there's a lot of different people from around the world who watch these videos and webinars. So write in the comment section in the chat where you're from and where you're listening from today. So, I'm just interested to see where everybody's from and how many countries we have in the room today. Also, in the chat, you can signal to me that you want to speak about something. So you can just put your hand up and I can give you the microphone. But I'll be speaking mostly today, so there's a lot of information to get through, so we don't really have a lot of time to discuss everything. And I won't really be answering any questions in the chat, but there will be a moderator in the chat answering your questions. So feel free to write your questions in the chat or in the comment section, and you will hear from me or from the moderator. But right now, I'm going to be presenting all of the information that we need, and so I won't be able to answer all of the questions that you write in the chat. Also, remember to take notes. I think I said it already. Get a pen, get a notepad, take notes, and later on, I'm going to send you a replay of this video. So you'll be able to watch it again and again. And that's something that you'll definitely want to do. All right, so let's get into it, guys. First, let's talk a little bit about English. So there are about 1 billion English speakers in the world, and that's a really, really big number. And on your screen, you see some other numbers too. 500 million native speakers and 500 million non-native speakers. Now, those are not exact numbers. 500 million non-native speakers, I think, is a low number because I think there are more non-native speakers of English in the world than native speakers. But what that means is that there are lots of different types of English. And if we want to speak naturally, that's the first thing that we need to start thinking about right now. All right, you guys got it? We need to start thinking about how many different people there are who speak English and how many different types of English there are that people speak. So if we want to sound natural, what type of natural? Do you understand? There's a lot of different people around the world, a lot of different countries that speak English. So what is natural to us might not be natural to them. So what exactly do we want? We need to set a clear goal for ourselves. And let's look at a map of English-speaking countries around the world. So you can see the little dots or symbols on the map. And let's start all the way on the left or west of the world. And you can see a dot on the country of Canada and on the United States. And these two countries together make up what we call North American English. So if we want to talk about different types of English in the world, this is called North American English. And it has specific rules and accents, so things that make it different from other types of English. And you can see there's a little box there that says, I live here, and pointing to Tampa, Florida. That's where I'm doing this webinar from today. Then if we go south, you see two dots. One is on Jamaica and one is on Belize. So Belize is a country near Mexico that speaks English. The official language is English. And in general, there are a lot of other countries in this region too, like Trinidad and Tobago, which are all grouped together into something called Caribbean English. If we move over to Europe, you can see three dots there, and you probably know what these ones are because they're the most famous ones, the most popular ones, the ones that everybody knows. So there's England and Ireland and Scotland. And yeah, there's a country, Wales, and there's the country of Northern Ireland there also. But we can group all of these together into one thing that we call British English. Even though a lot of the different areas that are nearby, that are close to each other, they actually speak different types of English. So there are very big differences between them. But in general, we categorize them into British English. So then if we go down to Africa, you see four dots on Africa. One is Nigeria, another one is Kenya, another one is Zambia, and one is South Africa. And really, South Africa has the closest to a European style of English out of all of these countries, probably. But let's just categorize all of them as African English. Then if we move east, we have a dot on India, and India has a very special type of English. Indian English sounds very different from other types of English. Then we have Singapore, and in Singapore they have a special type of English called Singlish. It's a mix of English and local languages and Chinese, which is very well known in Singapore also, because it's an official language. Then we have Australian English and New Zealand English, which together make up Australian English. So decide right now, what type of natural do you want? How do you want to sound? Because if you are going to move to Australia, then you need to study Australian English. And if you're going to study in the United States, you need to study North American English. If you're going to get a job in England, you need to study British English. So, just because you sound natural in one place doesn't mean when you travel to other places that you'll sound natural there. Instead, what we want to do is we want to set up a system so that we can understand the sounds that people in that country make or in that region make, and we can copy them so we can sound more like them. So let's move forward and talk about the different material that we're going to talk about in these 4 days, questions that we're going to answer in this webinar series. So in day 1, today, we're going to answer the question, why study pronunciation? What does it mean to speak naturally? And what does it mean to have an accent? So we're going to answer those questions very soon. And then days 2, 3, and 4, we also have other questions that we're going to answer. And guys, these aren't all the questions that we're going to answer. These are just some of the main topics, and we want you to start thinking about them now. So that's why I'm showing them to you. Also, like I said, we want to set up a system for analyzing our speech in English. That's the biggest goal here. That's what is probably one of the most important things that we can do, is to analyze our speech and to use a system to do this. So what you see right now on your screen is a 4-part system. When we hear native speakers speaking, and when we hear other English speech, or when we watch a DIY video on YouTube, or when we watch an English television program, we want to analyze their speech according to these categories. So there are lots of different elements, lots of aspects of how people speak a language. And let's look at these. We're not going to go into them in detail right now, because we'll talk about them a little bit later. But the 4 categories are sounds, which is basically, when we move our mouth, what comes out. So there are vowels, consonants, intonation, stress, pauses, and spaces. These are all different aspects of sounds. So we have one sound system, and actually you're going to get a PDF. You can download it. There will be a link in the chat, and we'll also post a link under the video later. So there will be a link that you'll get that will let you download the PDFs. You'll have one PDF for the sound system, and there you'll want to write new things that you hear. So when you hear how a vowel sounds a little bit different than what you thought it should sound like, you can write it there. And we want to do the same with all 4 of these categories. So the content system will be about which words you choose, using the right words, using different types of words, and using the right words for the right situations. And then when we talk about culture, we're also going to speak about knowledge and awareness. This is something that a lot of people don't really think about, because native speakers might not know that in other places they speak differently. So this might cause them to behave in a certain way, or to think that something is right or wrong. And sometimes actually a non-native speaker knows more words or knows more about the language than the native speaker. And even though that sounds funny, it's really the truth. So we're going to look at that some more, and then we'll also look at the psychology. So what is stopping us from speaking, or what is stopping us from expressing ourselves in a certain way? What is the person trying to communicate with his body? Or maybe he's trying to give us a signal that he feels uncomfortable right now. So these are all things that we want to think about when we're analyzing our speech. And you definitely want to download the free PDFs. You can find the link right there in the chat, and make sure you download them and print them out too. You don't have to leave the webinar to print them out, but print them out and start using them. So the first day today is called Change Your Language, Change Your Life. And that's really what we want to do. We want to help you change your language, change the way that you understand the English language, and help you to get to point B. You're at point A right now, and you want to get to point B, and there are some things that you need to do in order to get there. So that's why you're here in this webinar, and you made a really great decision, because we're going to take you to point B today and throughout this webinar series. So, when you change the way that you speak your language, you're going to actually think about everything a little bit differently, and it's going to be much easier for you in the future when you communicate with native speakers and when you communicate with other English speakers in general. First of all, I want to ask you, what does it really mean to be correct in a language? Usually people think that a native speaker is the most correct because he just speaks without thinking and it's according to some kind of rules or set of rules. Guys, it's not true. You know, native speakers make maybe more mistakes than other people because they don't think about the rules. And when someone follows all of the rules, it sounds kind of strange. You know, think about your language. If someone speaks very, very properly, very correctly all the time, doesn't it sound a little strange? Because people want to hear slang. People want something interesting. People want to hear someone being creative with the language. And being creative with the language is very important. That's what we want to develop to sound more natural. So I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Kris Amerikos, and I'm here because I love to teach English. So, you know, I'm not going to talk too much about myself because we have a lot of material to go through, but if you want to find out more about me, you can go to my website, english.krisamerikos.com. And, you know, if you haven't signed up for days 2, 3, and 4 of this webinar series, make sure you go to englishhacks.krisamerikos.com. And on the screen, you can see my email, my VK page, my Facebook page, my Instagram page, and also the Telegram chat. All of you who are watching this now are welcome to join that chat. And I encourage you to do so because we will be posting a lot of useful resources there. So yeah, it's great to be with you guys today. So let's get to our first question. The question that we said we were going to answer in day 1, and it's, what does it mean to have an accent? So before we can take your accent away, or before you can get rid of your accent, first you need to understand what it means to have an accent. How many of you guys think you have an accent? You know, go ahead and write a comment in the chat if you think that you have an accent. And then maybe tell me what kind of accent, or, you know, why you think you have that accent. And I'm going to tell you what I think about accents. So in order to tell you that, I'm going to also share some stories or examples with you. The first one is a man from Boston in Florida. So there's a guy who has lived in Boston all his life, and then he went to Florida for a vacation. And when he got to Florida, people heard him speaking and they understood that he's not from around there. In fact, his accent, the way he speaks, sounds like he's from the north part of the United States. It sounds like he's from New York. So people start saying, oh, that's that guy from New York. But really, he's from Boston. And he gets very annoyed and frustrated. Why do people keep calling me the guy from New York? I'm from Boston. And people from Boston don't really like people from New York. So it's annoying for him. I'm telling you the story because even native speakers in their own country can feel like people, like they have a different accent, like they have some kind of accent and other people don't understand them, or other people think something about them. This happens with everybody. Everybody has an accent. I would say that it's impossible not to have an accent. Really. It's impossible not to have an accent because the accent is just your personality, you know? It's how you speak the language. And sure, maybe if you know more of the language, you can speak it better. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to have an accent. I have an accent. I'm speaking to you right now. I have an accent. And people who are not from the same place that I'm from can tell me that I have an accent. So it doesn't really matter if you have an accent or not. Fluency is more important. Being creative with the language is more important. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So another example about accents really being confusing things and not being so important for us to focus on is the girl from Germany in Ohio. So she lived in Ohio for about a month. And when she met people, they would ask her, where are you from? You sound like you're from Canada. And she thought that this was a huge compliment. She thought it was a compliment because she thought that it means that they think that she's a native speaker. But really what it meant was the people there just didn't have any experience with people who sound different. Everybody sounded the same. They met one person who sounded different and they said, oh, the closest place that I know where people have a different accent, or the closest place where I think people have an accent, is Canada. So probably this person with an accent is from Canada. So that's about a lot of people who don't have a lot of knowledge or awareness, like we said before, uh, about different accents and where people are from with different accents, and why people have those accents. So, someone might understand something or say something to you because of an accent. That doesn't mean that your English is bad. That might mean that they're not aware. And the last example here is, it's kind of funny. The man from Brooklyn, the man from the Bronx, these are two different areas of New York City. And, if a person from Brooklyn goes to the Bronx, people will say that he's not from there, but they're both in New York City. And the same if someone from the Bronx goes to Brooklyn. So can we really say that having an accent is a bad thing? No. Can we ever get rid of an accent? We can change our accent, but it's impossible to not have an accent at all. And okay, you guys might be saying to yourselves right now, well, Kris, of course, all of these accents don't matter. All the examples you gave us were people in the United States. But no, it's not only that. There's other people too. Internationally, there's some issues with accents. For example, the man from Bulgaria in Canada. So the man from Bulgaria in Canada, he had studied British English. He knew British English perfectly. But when he came to Canada and started speaking to people, they said, hey, that sounds strange. We don't say that around here. We don't say those words. We speak differently. But really, what happened was that the Bulgarian guy knew more words. He knew the British words and the North American English words. So the people who were in Canada, in this area of Canada, not everywhere in Canada is like this, of course, but in this area, they said that, this is strange because we are not aware of the different types of English, about English in England, British English. So you can see here that him having an accent didn't mean that it was something bad. Actually, it just meant that he was more skilled in English. But still, he needs to learn how to adapt, right? And that's what we're talking about. How about the woman from Ukraine in Australia? So the woman from Ukraine in Australia, this is another example. She learned all the greetings, all of the slang phrases, all the usual phrases that people say when they go to the pub or the bar in Australia. She could say anything about drinking, about bars. And so when she went to those places in Australia, she knew all those words. But she didn't know any other words in English. So someone who just met her on the street or met her, through a mutual friend, they would say, oh, she doesn't really speak English. But if she met one of these people at a pub or a bar, they would think that she was completely fluent in English. So really, what we're saying here is that your accent is not something that is bad. Your accent changes. Your accent shows us something special about you. And you can always adapt to a new place by learning the skills that you need to speak with different people. And that's what we're doing. We're setting up a system in this webinar series. And the third example, the man from the United States in Russia. So there's a guy from the United States. He traveled to Russia. He moved there to teach English. Does it sound like somebody familiar? And when he first got there, a lot of the teachers of English in Russia said, we think that you're not from America. You're not from the United States because you don't speak proper British English like we do. So, of course, it sounds funny to anyone who's a native speaker to say that, you could go to another country and they're going to tell you that you don't speak your own language. But again, this is about accent, that a native speaker has an accent too, and it's different from what you probably learned in your English books. So guys, the next thing that I want to tell you, and it's all connected, it's all about accents and it's all about speaking more naturally, is this first big idea. You see, I wrote the words big idea with big letters, so it's really big. Speaking too correctly is speaking unnaturally. Just think about that for a second. If you speak too correctly, if you follow all the rules, then this is going to sound very unnatural. Really, guys. What you need to do is you need to learn how to speak incorrectly at the right times, how to break the rules. That's really, really important. And today we're talking all about breaking the rules to sound more natural. So, have you ever been to a library and you open a book and you start reading it? It sounds a lot different than, how I speak to you right now, or a video that you might find online, or a TV show, right? There's different words. It's written differently. When you read the words from the book, it sounds different. You guys don't want to sound like a book. Nobody wants to speak with someone who sounds like a book. If we wanted to go to the library, we could just get in my car and drive to the library and find a book. Don't need to speak to a book, right? So speaking too correctly, speaking by the rules in the books, this sounds unnatural, and we want to be able to make it sound more interesting, to be more creative, and to break some of the rules. So that's our big idea, and let's think about that idea as we continue. And guys, I told you that I really want you to start speaking more naturally now. So here's 10 things that you can do immediately to start sounding more natural. All right, let's get right into it. The first thing is stop saying ing. Yeah, guys, stop saying ing. You know that ending, ing, the thing you add to the end of the verbs? Ing. We don't say it. Instead, we should say something like ing, ing. Do you hear how there's a softer sound at the end? So the N and the G actually combine into one sound. Instead of us saying in g, we don't say g at the end. All right? You probably also have heard people say just in at the beginning. Sorry, at the end of the word. Just in. Things like I'm sitting, I'm thinking, I'm speaking English. So this is what we want to pay attention to. We want to pay attention to things like this and write them in our PDF that we printed out about the different sounds. Write what you thought it sounded like and what it should sound like, so when you review it, you know what you need to change. And great. I think everyone understands that one, and you've probably heard it before too. So number 2, stop saying hard T at the end and in the middle of words. And before we go any further, forget whatever you think about hard T's and soft T's and hard sounds and soft sounds. Probably it's completely different from English, because you probably have some ideas about this stuff from your language. But in English, it's a little bit different. So instead of thinking about it like that, a hard T just basically means this sound. T. This is a hard T. We usually hear a hard T at the beginning of a word that starts with T, like talk or to. But when we have T at the end of a word and in the middle of a word, especially when it's double T in the middle of the word, then it sounds a lot different. So the beginning of the word is T, but at the end of the word, it sounds like almost like we don't even say T. Let's take, for example, the word got. Do you hear how I said it? Did you hear how I said it? Got. G-O-T. Got. It almost sounds like the T doesn't exist. But actually, it's a very, very soft T sound at the end. And in the middle of words, there's something really interesting that we do with T sounds. So let's take, for example, the word better. But nobody says better because we don't say hard T in the middle, right? Instead, in American English, people usually change this T sound to a D sound, like better, better. Yeah, like bed, like the place where you sleep. Better. And in British English, they actually change this T sound in the middle of the word to what we call a glottal stop. A glottal stop. This is when you stop the air in your throat for a second and it makes a noise, makes a sound. So instead of better or better, they say something like better, better. I feel better. Something like this. So do you hear how there's just a stop in the air for a second and this makes a sound? So T sounds can be very, very different according to different regions and different types of English. So let's move forward to the third thing that we can do to start sounding like a native speaker right now, to start speaking more naturally and to become more fluent. The next thing that we need to do is we need to master the TH sounds. So of course, we're talking about and th. And when you're practicing saying these sounds, make them really, really, really long. So instead of saying think, say think. And instead of saying father, say father. Try that, guys. I know it probably sounds really funny and your neighbors might think that you're crazy, but really try it, say it out loud, and make it really, really long. All right? Brother, mother, father, other. All right? I think you get the picture. So do you see we're talking about specific sounds in the language that should sound one way, but you might think that they sound differently. So you need to pay attention to these sounds. And when you get different information from listening to different native speakers, on videos or in person or wherever you listen to English, when you hear these sounds or you hear something different, write it down in the PDF that I sent you. All right, write it down in the sounds column, in the sounds category. And then you can test it and you can try it again and you can practice it yourself. And then you'll have a record of this sound that you wanted to improve on and where you used to be, where you thought what you thought it sounded like and what it should sound like. All right? Number 4, pay attention to word stress and meaning connected to it. So, for example, let's say that, let's use the sentence, I did it. I did it. Here we stress the word did. And this tells us that this sentence has a positive verb, that I did it. It's affirmative. And if we change the word stress in the sentence, then it's going to be a different meaning. So, for example, I did it. Now what's important is I. It's important that you didn't do it, that nobody else did it, but that I am the person who did it. So we had I did it and I did it. Very different, but the same words. Another way that we can think about word stress is one individual word instead of a phrase. So, for example, 2-syllable words in English usually can be made into a noun and a verb. If we stress the first syllable, then it will be a noun. If we stress the second syllable, it'll be a verb. So, for example, import and import. So we can say that gas is the country's main import. They import a lot of gas. And when we switch the stress here, then the meaning switches, of course. So this is something we want to pay attention to as well. Next, learn and use more phrasal verbs. And guys, really, really, really do this. I know it's really difficult and phrasal verbs are hard to understand, but you need to learn more phrasal verbs and use more phrasal verbs in your speech. Native speakers use more phrasal verbs than non-native speakers. It's just a fact. Non-native speakers tend to use more Greek and Latin words, and those words are usually longer. Just think of it like this, guys. Phrasal verbs are very short. And shorter words sound more natural. They're faster to say. They're easier for people to say usually. They sound more natural. So if you have a choice between continue and go on, say go on. If you have a choice between ascend and go up, say go up. It's more natural. Next, use indirect language. Indirect language is stuff like could you, would you mind, would you be able to? So things like this make us sound very polite. And in English, that's important. We want to avoid using commands all the time because commands in English will get us in trouble. People don't like commands in English. So you might be asking, Kris, what do you mean by commands? And by command, I'm saying when you tell someone to do something instead of asking them to do something. So let's compare. If I tell you, give me that coffee, this is a command. And what can the result be? If you listen to me, if you obey, if you do what I tell you, then you give me the coffee, but you feel like I'm controlling you. You don't feel good about yourself because I commanded you to do it. You had no choice and you did it. On the other hand, if I command you, I say, give me that coffee, then if you don't do it, we will have a conflict. So giving a command creates this awkward, uncomfortable situation. But if we use indirect language, it's much different. Could you give me that coffee? Now, the person I'm speaking to has a choice because I asked them a question. Could you? Could you give me that coffee? And they have a decision to make, to do it or not to do it. This means that there's no conflict. If they say, no, I can't, or no, I couldn't, then it's okay because it was just a question. It wasn't a command. We use indirect language a lot in English, and even with friends, sometimes we use it. It's just a habit. Sometimes people laugh about it, that when you're with your friend and you say, please hand me that, or could you help me with this, or something like that, right? And if he's your friend, why do you need to use all these polite words? Well, it's because in English, when we use these polite words, it's respectful to the other person. And when we use a command, it sounds like it's starting a problem. So we need to learn to use indirect language, even if we don't think that it's necessary in our own language. Next, learn when to pronounce s, z, is, and t, d, id. So that might not make any sense to you right now, but these are sounds at the end of words. The first three, s, z, and is, we use for plural words, plural nouns. So we have one dog, two dogs. Or we also use them with verbs when we say he, she, or it. So he runs. So why do we say dogs and runs, not dogs and runs? Why? Well, we have a rule here. So when we have the last sound of a word that ends with an unvoiced sound, we add the ending sound s. And you guys, the letter at the end of the word doesn't matter. All of these words will end with s. But at the end of the word, after the last sound being an unvoiced sound, then we use s. If it's a voiced sound at the end of the word, then we say z. And the best rule of all, the funniest one, is when we use is. If the last sound of the word is s or z or zh or ch or sh, then we use is. Can you remember that? So for example, we have one bush, we have two bushes, one kiss, two kisses, and things like that. And then of course, when the word ends with D, like in the past tense, past simple tense of English, then there are three different sounds. It might be t, d, or id. Again, if it's unvoiced, if the last sound of the word is unvoiced, then we use t. If it's voiced, we use d. And if it's t or d, then we use id. So for example, wait, the last sound of the verb to wait is a T sound, t. And we said that after t or d, we use id, so we say waited, waited. But for other verbs like walk, then it would be walked, because the last sound, k, is an unvoiced sound. So this is something that you can study more on your own, and you can write it into your PDF, into the system about sounds. Next, listen for phrases that make other people cringe. And if you don't know what cringe means, it's when somebody maybe feels very uncomfortable, maybe even ill from when they hear or see something. So like, ugh, some feeling like this. So when you need to listen for these phrases that make other people cringe, when you are speaking to people and other people have this reaction, this actually is a very, very good thing. I know you probably thought that it's terrible, but it's actually very good for you because they're giving you a clue. They're giving you a signal that you need to change something. So what you want to do is, in this moment, when you make someone cringe with your English, you want to experiment. You want to try different things and try using a different phrase or pronouncing the same word differently. If you feel comfortable with that person, ask them to tell you, okay, how am I supposed to pronounce this word? And, this is a good opportunity this means that you have a problem here. This is a problem area for you. And they helped you identify that. They helped you find that problem. So listen for phrases that make other people cringe so that you can remember not to say them and you can change them to something else. Then focus on vowel pronunciation and how it differs from your language. We started talking about it a little bit earlier, but vowels are the things that really give people accents. Even in one language, people pronounce vowels differently, and that's what we perceive, that's what we think are accents. So especially the vowel A and the vowel O, when people pronounce these differently in different regions or different countries, this gives people an accent. We think that people have an accent because they speak differently and they say these sounds differently. So in day 2, we're actually going to go into a lot of detail about all of the different vowel sounds, how they sound, some consonant sounds, and day 2, we're going to do a lot of work to make sure that you have all the right sounds. So the last thing that you need to do right now to start sounding more natural is, guys, say clothes. Don't say clothe is. Please don't say clothe is. When you say clothe is, it makes people like me, English teachers, cry. Don't make me cry. Don't say clothe is. Please just say clothes. So this word has one syllable, clothes, not 2 syllables. It's not 2 different sounds. It's just one. All right, guys? Great. So now on to our second question that we need to answer today. Why study pronunciation? And when I announced that I was doing this 4-day webinar series, a lot of people actually asked me, like, Kris, how do you think people are going to be able to learn to speak, and how are they going to be able to join pronunciation? How are they going to be able to study and learn pronunciation when they're just sitting in a webinar? And I agree 100% with that. That's why we need practice. And that's why we have the Telegram group. So if you guys haven't joined the Telegram group already, there will be a link in the chat. And you can also just find it on the slide. You can watch this video later and go back and find it there. It's written on some of the slides that I've shown you. And Guys, go join that. There's 2 different Telegram groups that you'll have access to. Get Motivated Telegram group, where we'll post lots of resources to help you, learn English now, to want to learn English, to want to go and study. And also the second Telegram group that you'll have access to when you sign up for days 2, 3, and 4, you'll be able to send in your speaking practice. So the speaking practice will be tasks that you actually can complete. You're going to record your own voice and you're going to send it to me, and I'm going to listen to it, and I'm going to tell you what you need to be focusing on specifically for you individually. So why study pronunciation? Well, because we want to be understood by people, right? Because we want to say things in a way that won't be confused with other things. And in order to demonstrate this point, I have some funny situations that I've heard before. So for example, the teacher says, "What does your father do?" And the student says, "My father is a very impotent man." I laughed really hard when one of my students said this in class. And this is just, simple pronunciation error that can make a really funny situation. The second situation, teacher says, "I need your answer." And the student says, "I'm sinking." So both of these are pretty funny, and yeah, you would be surprised how often people make these mistakes. So of course, in the first example, we need to say important, not impotent. And in the second example, we need to say thinking, not sinking, right? All right, great. So that brings us to our next big idea. And this big idea is that words don't sound like anything. They're just a bunch of letters put together. And this really gives us the answer to the question about why we need to study pronunciation. Because words don't sound like anything. Words don't have sounds. You guys got that? Words don't have sounds. People make sounds. People create sounds when they use words, but the words themselves don't have sounds. So an accent and pronunciation, correct pronunciation of words, this is just different people in different places making different sounds and attributing them or associating them with the written word. So guys, words do not have sounds. So when you're looking at different words, you can remember how a word is written. And sure, a lot of times, if you follow the phonetic rules of English, you can understand how you should pronounce the words too. But if you're speaking with people and if you're listening to native speakers and how they speak, and if you're going to copy it to sound more natural, then understand that there's a word, there's letters written on a piece of paper or wherever they're written, on a computer screen, wherever, and then there's people who say the word. And we want to copy people who say the word, and we want to stop worrying so much about how the word is spelled or written, because the written word doesn't have any sound. So guys, let's move forward to the basic stuff. Basic stuff that we need to do to successfully start speaking more naturally right now. So first of all, we need to learn how to listen. I think it's one of the biggest problems that people have is that they think too loudly. And when they're thinking so much, they're not listening. So someone is speaking to them and speaking to them and speaking to them, but they aren't saying anything. Because the person who's listening doesn't really understand that they're saying something. The person who is supposed to be listening is actually thinking about something else. Is that how you feel when you speak a language and when you hear someone else speak a language? That maybe the person is just, maybe the person is trying to listen, but they're not really listening. They're thinking of what they can say. And we want to avoid doing this when we're trying to learn the language. We want to listen for the small sounds that native speakers are making that are going to give us clues about how we're supposed to speak. So stop thinking so much. Start listening more. I remember some people who told me that, there's no difference between the words bad, like the opposite of good, and bed, where you sleep. And they couldn't hear the difference in this sound. And I realized that they are looking at a word, and they expect that a word has a specific sound. And they're wrong. And maybe in their language, they don't have these sounds. So they're thinking about how something should sound. They're thinking about words that have sounds, but words don't have sounds, right? People make sounds. So instead of listening to the person who makes the sounds, they're just looking at the word and expecting that it will sound the way they expect. Guys, this is a big problem. We don't want to do this. So stop thinking so loudly, start listening. Next, how you can start listening to English and how you need to listen to English. The way that you listen to English is very important. The process is very important. So guys, the first thing you need to do is pay attention to clues. Like I was just saying, native speakers are speaking, they're giving you clues, they're saying things that are natural for them. And if you want to also speak naturally, you need to listen to these signals, to these clues. So for example, right now you're listening to me speak. I speak North American English. I told you guys I'm from Florida, from the United States. So I pronounce things with a North American accent, of course. And when you're listening to me, you might think, oh, why did he say it like this? Or why did he say this word like this? Write those things down, guys. Write those things down. You need to take notes. So write them down, and you want to compare them to how you thought they were supposed to sound. So if you thought that bad and bed are the same word, or that they have no difference in pronunciation, listen to how I say these two words and try to understand the difference. And then if you don't understand the difference, look at another example of this thing. Go find another video where people talk about this. And just keep finding examples until it becomes clearer and clearer. So that's step one. Pay attention to clues. And part of that is to stop thinking and to start listening. Next, copy and practice. So after you say, okay, I understand that there's a difference and I hear this small difference between the words bad and bed, now you copy them, you practice them, you say them. So really, you can sit at home and say them over and over again. You can look in the mirror and pronounce them, and you can record yourself and check to see how well you say them. And the third step is compare and get feedback. You're going to compare how you sound now to how you used to sound. So the new sound that you're trying to make, that is based on what people say, not on what words sound like, compare that to what you thought that the word originally sounded like. All right? So when you are comparing this, you can also get feedback from native speakers or from other English speakers, and ask them, hey, is this right? Am I saying this right? Or maybe say a phrase and look at them, check and see if they cringe, like what we were talking about before, right? See if they have a terrible look on their face, like, oh, what did he just say? I can't believe he pronounced it like that, right? If people give you those looks, maybe you should start over again. Pay attention to the clues again. Find the sounds, copy them, practice them, and then compare them, and then get feedback. Great, guys. So that's our process for listening to English so that we can speak more naturally. Next, don't forget about culture. And actually, the language culture is more important than the language rules. All right? Yes, it's important to learn the rules. It's important to learn grammar. But if all of the people in a place decide that one of the grammar rules isn't important anymore, guess what? Nobody will say it anymore, and then it will stop existing. So the language culture is more important than the grammar rules. The language culture is one of the most important things. And how do you learn that? Well, you need to listen to native speakers. And we just talked about listening, so now you know how to listen to them. There are rules. There are always rules. And you need to learn how to change the rules, how to break the rules, how to play with the rules, how to express yourself how you want. All right? And this is really, really good advice here. When you hear something that sounds strange, you shouldn't think that the person who said it is odd or that people from that country are odd. Instead, you should think that you need to learn more about their culture before making any judgments. All right? It's not them who's weird, it's you who's weird. You're speaking their language. Okay? So I know we're learning English and English is my language, so it sounds not very objective here. But honestly, guys, when you're listening to someone else speaking their language, how could they be strange? Sure, there are strange people in the world, but usually the way that they're speaking is going to be more natural than how we're speaking, right? So we want to listen to them and we want to pick up on those signals and understand those clues that they're giving us. Next, stop translating everything. It's okay to translate when you're writing a paper and you can't find the right word. It's okay to translate when you're reading a book and you don't understand something. In those situations, it's perfectly fine to translate. But when you're speaking to someone, don't translate. Please don't translate. You're just going to kill the conversation, you know? And we don't want to do that. We definitely don't want to kill the conversation. We're trying to speak, right? And we're trying to speak more naturally. So stop translating. And more importantly, stop thinking that there is a translation for everything. Stop thinking that every word in your language has a translation, or that every English word has a literal or direct translation. Instead, these are different words. It's especially easy to see when we have a word in one language that has a different alphabet and a word in English, because they really look like different words. And that's how we should always think of this. A word in Spanish or a word in English, these are two different words, yes, and maybe they look similar, but they have different meanings. And for someone, they might also have some slang meaning, and for other people, it might just be one meaning, one simple meaning. So stop translating and start listening, okay? Listen, 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 it's key. Next, don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's part of the learning process, guys. You have to make mistakes in order to learn. And this is really funny, and you should always think of this next time, anytime when you start making mistakes, or when someone is upset that they're making mistakes in the process of learning a language. Think about this. If you didn't make mistakes, it wouldn't be learning. It would be knowing. Okay? So if we're learning a language, we have to make mistakes. If we don't make mistakes, then we're not learning the language. We already know the language. Does that make sense, guys? And even people who know the language still make mistakes. So I would add that too. Everybody makes mistakes. And mistakes are not something to be afraid of. Mistakes are just something to learn from and to use to your advantage. So on top of that, guys, never apologize for making mistakes when you're speaking English. All right? Nobody cares. You made a mistake, you just move forward. And the most important thing for sounding fluent and sounding natural is to not focus on those mistakes and to understand that people speak differently. So don't apologize for making mistakes, just move forward, keep going. That's called fluency. Next, forget negative words and phrases. And guys, this can really kill your motivation. Motivation is very, very important when you're learning anything. So you really need to forget these negative words and phrases like, I can never remember, or I'm stupid, or it's so hard to speak English, or I'll never learn this. All right? Not only does it kill your motivation, but it also makes other people around you feel uncomfortable. And if you're trying to speak naturally and carry a conversation in English, you don't want other people to sound you don't want to make other people feel uncomfortable. That's the opposite of what we want to do. And don't take it personally when people don't understand you. All right? When someone tells you that I didn't understand what you said, can you repeat that? You shouldn't feel bad about that. You should just repeat. Because maybe they just have a problem with their hearing, or maybe they just weren't focused on what you were saying. They weren't listening. and they just asked you to repeat, and might not be anything about your language skills at all. And I know a lot of people who really get upset when they travel to another country, they go to a shop, and they go to buy something, and the person, the cashier or shop assistant, asks them, "Hey, where are you from? I like your accent." And I know a lot of people who think, "Wow, they said that I have an accent. My English is so bad." Or they think, they're asked where I'm from. This means that I don't sound natural, or I don't sound like a native. And guys, that's okay. Remember the story about the guy from Boston in Florida? People said that he had an accent. People did the same thing to him. When he walked into the store, people said, "Hey, where are you from? I like your accent." Because it's new for people. So it doesn't mean that your English is bad when people say this. It means that you're interesting and people want to talk to you. So don't take it personally. And guys, you can't just learn in class. If you go to an English course or English lessons or English speaking clubs, or if you listen to this webinar or any other webinars, it's not enough to help you just start speaking, okay? Just a webinar cannot do it for you. And I think you guys understand that already, because you have to be pretty smart if you registered and came here and you're looking for ways to speak more naturally. So you guys are smart enough to understand that just coming to a webinar isn't going to make you start magically speaking. You need to do your homework. You need to use online resources. You need to study on your own. You need to find people to practice with. Of course, these things help, okay? What we want to do in this webinar series is to set up the system for you so that when you want to speak more naturally, and when you study and when you listen to other people speaking, you understand what you need to listen for and how to change that in your speech. All right? We're setting up a system that is going to help you speak more naturally. Today is just the first day. There's 4 steps. There's four days, and lots of information for us to cover. So, if you haven't signed up for days 2, 3, and 4 yet, make sure you go to englishhacks.krisamerikos.com and sign up for the next 3 days. Because today we're going over, the general information about what's included in the course. Tomorrow is very intensive. Tomorrow is very heavy on sounds, and specifically, the letters of the alphabet, what sounds they make, how you can understand what sounds they make, and the common mistakes that people make when they're trying to pronounce something. Tomorrow's day or topic is called "Why You Sound Like a Weirdo." So we're going to go through why people sound strange when they speak. What do native speakers look for, and what makes them accept someone when they speak or not, if we can say that. So make sure not to just take this webinar, make sure to keep studying, but this webinar will definitely help you set up your system so that you'll be able to learn more effectively and to speak more naturally faster. Next, don't compare yourself to other people. If you have friends who also study or speak English, don't compare yourself to them. Everybody learns differently, all right? Everybody's got their own journey. So comparing yourself to other people is not going to help you one little bit. And guys, I don't know how many times I can say it, but you need to get motivated. You need to get motivated. Motivation is the most important thing in learning English. I was just teaching a student yesterday who told me that he took his first scuba diving lesson. And he told me that at one point when he was under the water, he had a panic attack. So he felt a lot of stress. He started getting really anxious, and he signaled to the instructor that he wanted to go up, that there was a problem and he needed to get out of the water. And the instructor told him, "No, just calm down. We're not going anywhere. Just calm down." And he was having a panic attack. Now, just think about this. You're underwater, you're having a panic attack, it's your first time scuba diving, and you want to go up. You want to get out of the water, but the instructor says, "No, it's okay. Stay calm." If you have motivation, if you really want to learn scuba diving, you'll stay. And that's what he did. But if you don't have motivation, if you had doubts, if you weren't sure if you could really do it or not, then in this difficult situation, you'll probably just quit, and you'll probably get out of the water, and you'll probably say, this isn't for me. The same with English, guys. There are barriers, there are difficult situations, hard parts of the language and hard parts of your education that you go through. And having motivation is going to push you forward. So when you're trying to speak more naturally, there's going to be a lot of times that you make mistakes. There's going to be a lot of frustrating and annoying and difficult things that happen throughout your development. You got to keep that motivation, guys, even when things turn out in the way that you didn't want them to, or even when people say that you don't sound natural, or that they don't understand you. You guys, you got to keep the motivation up. That's why we created the Telegram group, the Get Motivated Telegram channel. So in there, we're going to be motivating people. Make sure you get Telegram and you go there and you join this channel. There should be a link in the chat if you haven't joined already. So join that channel now. And remember, stay motivated. It's really the most important thing you can do. So you are going to have homework in this webinar series too. That's the only way to practice, right? And I mean, a good teacher needs to give you homework. So record yourself speaking English to set a baseline. A baseline is basically where you're starting from, what you sound like now. All right? And you're going to send your recording in the private Telegram chat. So, you register for days 2, 3, and 4, you get access to the private Telegram chat. And that's where, you can just send me a private message and I'll answer you, or you can record yourself and send it and I'll tell you what you need to work on, everything like that. So what you want to do is record yourself very often. You don't only have to send it to the Telegram chat. You can also record yourself for yourself, just to review it. So the first thing you want to do is set that baseline, record how you sound now. Then the second thing is that you need to understand what you need to do to get to where you want to be. So how to change that. And that's what this webinar series does. All 4 days together, we're going to tell you what you need to do to change from how you sound now to get to where you want to be. So, point A to point B, and that connecting section, that's this webinar series. We're going to take you from point A to point B. So how you want to sound in the future, you need to decide that today. And we're going to work a little bit more on that today too. But you need to decide that today, how you want to sound. You need to record yourself so you know how you already sound, and then use the tools that we give you here to bring those two together to make progress. So enough about the basic stuff, guys. Let's talk about the important stuff, right? Everyone learns differently. And the most important thing to do is to get organized. So I've said this to people before. If you only have 3 days to study English and you only have 1 hour each day, then break it down. On day 1, you can on day 1, you can study vocabulary. On day 2, you can study grammar. On day 3, pronunciation. So that means it doesn't matter what order either, guys. Monday could be grammar, Wednesday pronunciation, Friday vocabulary. The important part here, the important thing to remember is just to make a plan. Get organized, make a plan, decide how much time you're going to spend studying English each week. All right? Make that decision today. That's if you're going to change your language and you're going to change your life, like what we're trying to do today. First of all, you need to make this decision. And it doesn't take a long time. Just think about it. And you can easily make a decision about how much time you're going to spend studying. And then break it down. What are you going to study each day? Get organized, guys. And after you're organized, get prepared. So when you're watching, TV shows, YouTube videos, when you're reading messages, when you're speaking with someone, write down what you learn. And printing out those PDFs that we gave you is really going to help out with that, because you're going to have categories and clear reasons to write down those words so you can compare them, what you think it is now, and then get more examples and then write down what you think it is then. So your learning process should look like this. Pay attention to the clues, copy and practice, compare and get feedback. like we said before, about listening to people. And in other words, that means listen to what people say, and then say it yourself, and then say it to somebody else and watch their reaction. All right? So, talking about the system a little bit more, about where we need to write this information after we hear how people say it differently. So, we have the sound system, and here we have vowels, consonants, intonation, and stress, and pauses and spaces. So, sounds, how people make the sounds, specific sounds of letters, sounds within words, the whole word sound, the sounds of sentences, and even when we don't say sounds. All right, so all of that is in one category, one system. Next is the content, word choice, helping verbs, phrasal verbs, filler words, and slang and idioms. So all of those together are about our content. And if you don't know what any of those are, you can just send a message to the Telegram chat and I'll explain it a little bit more. But phrasal verbs we went into already. Filler words are just small words that help us transition. And helping verbs really change the meaning of other verbs and sentences. So yeah, we're not going to talk about that too much more now. This is your resource to print out and to use on your own. We also have the culture system. We talked a lot about knowledge and awareness today, but cultural perspective, this is, sometimes it's okay to say some things to old people or not okay to say things to old people in certain countries. Sometimes it's okay to use specific types of language with young people, and in other countries it's not. So these are different cultural perspective items, and we want to write them down. And when we see something strange in another country, let's write it down here. Let's not say, well, everybody in that country does this. Instead, let's write it down as a cultural perspective. Maybe one person does this. Maybe it's just what he does, or maybe everybody does it. So let's write it down and compare. And perceived competence. Sometimes something that you say or do will make people think a specific thing about you, but you might not know it at all. So just because you speak a certain way or say certain words or do something, they might think that you are in a certain category of people, and you might not know that at all. So this is also a cultural item. And also about psychology, barriers, behavioral cues and body language, situational comfort, and anxiety. What makes people feel good? What makes people feel bad? What do they say in these situations? And how do they express themselves with words and with their bodies? So different behavior that they have. Guys, we're not going to talk about this anymore. If you have any questions about it, write me in the Telegram chat. So let's go to the third question that we want to answer today. What does it mean to speak naturally? And what do you guys think? What does it mean to speak naturally? Anybody? I see some comments popping up there. So what does it mean to speak naturally? And I just am showing you something on the screen now that probably looks really, really funny. And it might look, like you might not understand what it means. So let's talk about it a little bit. A non-native speaker says something like, I know what is your favorite color. And here we have a grammar mistake, not what is your favorite color, but we should say what your favorite color is, right? But anyways, it sounds very clear and all of the words are correct. Just the order is a little bit wrong. But a native speaker will say something more like, I know what your favorite color is. And this means that they blend words together. So we have two words here that aren't really any real words in English, tyor and riz. So again, we have, I know what your favorite color is. Do you see? So when we have a word that ends with a consonant and the next word that begins with a vowel, we usually blend them together. So we want to start thinking about it like this. We want to start thinking about how native speakers actually speak, to listen to the real sounds they say, and especially when they connect words together. Another example, non-native speakers might say, what are you doing? And a native speaker will say, what you doing? What you doing? So if you look at these examples, who seems to be more correct in English? The non-native speaker seems more correct, right? Because the native speaker is always changing the rules. It's always breaking the rules and doing something strange. So we can say that the non-native speaker actually speaks more correctly, right? I mean, if you look at what I'm showing you right now. And that's a general thing that we want to consider. That's another big idea that we want to talk about. Here are some more examples. Maybe you know the word ain't. Ain't is kind of slang. It means is not or are not or am not. And a non-native speaker might say ain't is not a word. And a native speaker will say ain't a word. And this is actually a joke because it's irony. It's using ain't in the sentence where we're trying to say that you can't use ain't. Another example, a non-native speaker will say something like, I really like your style, which is completely correct. And a native speaker might say something like, I'm really liking your style. And this does have a little bit different meaning, but it's not grammatically correct. Okay, so the big idea here that we want to communicate to you guys is the biggest difference between speaking naturally and speaking unnaturally is knowing when and how to break the rules. Guys, native speakers break the rules all the time. All right? Native speakers make mistakes on purpose, and they break the rules on purpose. And so when people tell me that they want to speak like a native speaker, I tell them that they better start breaking the rules. You need to learn how to make mistakes. You need to learn how to break the rules. Native speakers don't follow all of the rules. Native speakers break the rules, guys. So if you want to sound natural and you want to sound like a native speaker, you need to learn how to break the rules. Now, the funniest thing is that when we break rules, we have rules about how we break them. Okay? There are other rules even when we break the rules. So when you learn the rules, you can break them. And a lot of people just think that grammar is all about rules. Yes, there are lots of rules in grammar, but there are rules about how we can break the grammar too. I'll give you some more examples right now. First of all, we break rules in specific ways. Sometimes we ignore rules, sometimes we change rules, and sometimes we create new rules. But we never stop using rules. We just love rules. So let's look at these specific examples. It's correct to say, did you see that? So at the beginning, we have a helping verb, did, that tells us that it's a question. Did you see that? But native speakers will very often say, you see that? So in this case, we're using question intonation. And we're not using the helping verb, but we need to. So correct question structure tells us that we need to say did at the beginning of this sentence. But native speakers speak incorrectly. And native speakers break this rule and just use question intonation very often. Not all the time, but very often. Another example, you did well. And it's not right to say you did good, but most native speakers will say you did good. And this is the same as when someone asks the question, how are you doing? It's correct to say, well, I'm doing well. But honestly, guys, I don't know any native speakers who really answer like this. Okay, maybe I know one person who might say this because they want to speak very correctly. But most native speakers don't speak like this at all and don't think about it. And they think that it sounds strange when other people are speaking, so correctly. Instead, native speakers usually say, good, I'm doing good. All right, guys, so you see, it's a little different. We learn the rules to be correct. Yes, we need to learn those rules, but we also need to learn how to break them. And in our system for listening, like I was talking about before, the 4 different systems or 4 PDFs that you'll get, you need to print those out and start filling them in with things like this. All right? These are the things that you want to be listening for. Another example, nobody could do anything. And it's not correct to say nobody couldn't do nothing. But you'll actually hear native speakers say things like this, really. And Everyone understands them, but it's incorrect. And someone also might say this just as a joke because they know that it's incorrect. So they might make this mistake on purpose as a joke. Next, where are you? And guys, I've really actually heard someone say this. I was shocked myself that they said this. Where you be? It sounds very strange, but understandable. So guys, there's lots of different ways that different types of people break the rules. And you need to listen and understand the type of English that you're trying to learn, how they break the rules. All right, then we also have pronunciation rules. For example, it's correct to say February, but most native speakers say February. And it's correct to say comfortable, but almost every native speaker says comfortable. So these might not seem like big differences to you, but they are how people understand sounding natural or unnatural. Because when a person comes and speaks by all of the rules, local people, native speakers, think that they sound very strange. Who's this alien who speaks like a book? Do you understand what I'm saying? Instead, we want to focus on the sounds and words that they really say in this place so that we can sound more like the locals, like the natives. Not what the rule is and not how the word is spelled, okay? So another thing that we want to think about now is suffixes. Suffixes are endings of words, and they add some kind of meaning to a word. And I have 3 examples here. Ish, this means that it's similar to something or containing a small amount of this quality. For example, blue-ish. This means that something has a little bit of blue, or it's very similar to blue. And we can use this with a lot of different words. So what you want to do is you want to take these suffixes, and you can also use them with prefixes, which we add to the beginning of words, and experiment with them. See which words you can use them with and which ones you can't. The second one is So could be, if we add it to the end of a noun, it could be a person who does something, like work, worker. Right? So, sorry, that's if we add that's if we add er to a verb. It'll be the person who does this verb. So work, worker, or for example, write, writer, or swim, swimmer. But er at the end of a noun will make this mean that it's something bigger, right? Like bigger, smaller. Sorry, it's if we connect it to an adjective, then it'll be that this quality is more than what we thought it was. So this can be confusing, that there's 2 different endings that we might add, and they might be spelled the same and pronounced the same. And the last one is able. So this means that we can do it. It can be actualized, completed. So we want to experiment with these guys. That's what I'm talking about. Experiment with them, test the boundaries, and when you notice other people using them, take note. Take note that you can use it like this, or you can't use it like this, and experiment, practice adding these endings to different types of words, and find out what they mean, because you might be surprised. So what should you do next? Next, you should put these skills into practice. So we already answered some of the questions, all the questions from day 1, but we have a lot of other things to discuss. And really, day 2, day 3, and day 4 are much more intense. Today was a lot of general ideas so that you start thinking correctly about how you speak and how other people speak, so that you can receive the information in the next 3 days more correctly, and that it will be effective for you. So we have lots of questions to answer still in the upcoming days, but today we've already answered these 3 questions. We talked about 3 big ideas: that speaking too correctly is speaking unnaturally. Words don't sound like anything. People give sounds to words. And the biggest difference between speaking naturally and speaking unnaturally is knowing when and how to break the rules. These 3 big ideas should change how you analyze speech and how you think about your own speech. You're also getting the PDFs. So again, the links are in the chat. For people who are watching this video later on YouTube, I will post that stuff in the description of the video. And make sure that you download these PDFs and print them out. You have the 4 PDFs about the systems, the sound, content, culture, and psychology. Also, you'll have a PDF with the 10 things that you can do now to sound more natural. We talked about them already. And you'll also have a PDF of the top 103 most important words in English. And guys, this is kind of like another homework assignment that you can do here. You need to go through those 103 words and try to understand as many of the different meanings as possible. All right. And then also think about how, when they're pronounced differently, they might have a different meaning. You'll need to use a dictionary for that, most likely. But each of those words has multiple meanings. And if you can learn all of them, you'll really understand a lot. So day 2, why you sound like a weirdo, we're going to talk about the sounds of the language. We're just going to go into a lot of detail about the sounds. In day 3, don't call me sir, pal. We're going to talk about situational and contextual clues. And we're going to talk about formal and informal language. Honestly, guys, formal language is what you probably have been studying. You've probably been studying all the official rules, and you've probably been studying what you need to say when you meet the Queen of England. But informal English and informal language is actually much more important to know because you're going to use it more. And day 4, the small stuff makes a big difference. It's all about fluency and perceived competence. So we're going to make other people think that you are the boss of English, that you know everything about English, okay? They are going to think that your English is amazing, and we're going to look at strategies for how you can impress people with your English, what you need to add to your English to make it sound more natural. So homework. And guys, the best thing about webinars is that your dog can't eat your homework. So sorry if you thought you're going to get out of doing the homework. Your dog can't eat it, so you're going to have to do it. And it's really going to help you guys. You have to practice this stuff. So your homework is sign up right now for days 2, 3, and 4. There's a link already in the chat. And then join our Telegram channel. Actually, there's 2 channels. There's the Get Motivated channel, and then after you sign up for days 2, 3, and 4, you will get access to the private chat in Telegram. And then download and print out all of the PDFs that we were talking about. All right, really print them out because you'll want to write on them and you'll want to take them with you. So you're not always going to be able to get to them if they're just on your phone or on your computer. Next, record your baseline video message. And in this message, what you want to do is you want to talk about your goals that we talked about already. So you need to choose what type of English you want, how you're going to judge how natural you sound. So what type of English, what your plan is, how many hours per week you have to dedicate to English, and which things you're going to study on which days or how often per week. So this video message can only be a minute in Telegram. If your video messages aren't working, you can send an audio message in Telegram, but please don't make it any more than 2 minutes long. And I will respond to your video messages and audio messages. I'll tell you what I think you should be focusing on, and I'll tell you, the way that that you can achieve your goals and realize your plan. So also another thing that you can record and send into the Telegram chat is 5 words that have a prefix or a suffix, and give a definition of each word. So here we're experimenting with words that have prefixes and suffixes, all right? And we're practicing saying them, and again, you'll get feedback from me. And the last thing that you really need to do for homework is watch this webinar again. And, there's a lot of information that we covered in this webinar, and we're going to cover so much more information in the next 3 days. But watching this several times will definitely help you out so you can get all of those ideas, because we did move very fast today. All right, guys? So thanks again for joining me in this webinar. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. You can find me at my website, english.krisamerikos.com. And like I said, if you haven't signed up for the rest of the webinar, make sure you go and do that right now. you can go to englishhacks.krisamerikos.com. You can also send me an email, or you can find me on VK on Facebook or on Instagram. And don't forget to join the Telegram Get Motivated group, because it doesn't cost you anything. It's completely open to you, and you can stay in there and get motivation for forever, really. So thanks again, guys, and no matter where you are in the world, have a good morning, afternoon, evening, or night, and I will see you guys in day 2. Take care.